Lynn, thank you for being with us today.
Thank you very much for having me.
Now, you have an innovative new standard of care for anesthesia. Talk to us about your technology.
Well, the technology, having been developed over many years, is rather simple, and it's very simple for the practitioner to use. What it does in the instance of epidurals, which is our first foray into the medical market, is it saves a great deal of money for the institution. It's much safer, and it's something that not only we believe, but the key opinion leaders from throughout the world who have done the 9 studies on this product believe we will become the standard of care. What does that mean? It means that instead of having morbidity, instead of costing hundreds of millions of dollars throughout the world, we now are in a situation where we can deliver epidurals safely. Now it's over 99%. I don't know how long it will be when we do millions. We have 4 million women giving birth in the United States every year. 2.4 million women have the epidural for pain management. 1.6 million approximately do not, because they read the risk factors, which are enormous, and they also hear horror stories. So what our objective is to increase that envelope. But if you look at it, when you become the standard of care on a product, and we would be replacing 1860 technology, you must use the product. There's no alternative. If you don't use the standard of care, you can't practice. So to take round numbers of the 2.4 million, not the 4 million, the 2.4 that have the epidural, if 2 million of them have the epidural, as you know, we're in the disposable business, though we also sell a computer, that's $80 million a year given our present profit margin, $40 on disposable. So that's $80 million to Milestone Scientific net profit in the epidurals area, without expanding the market, just getting a piece of that market and becoming the standard of care. We think that that's very, very compelling.
You have over 9 peer-reviewed published studies validating your instrument's effectiveness. Explain the importance of these studies and their applications as you move forward to commercialize.
Well, doctors use technology based on studies that they read. So it's imperative to have studies. For marketing purposes and to become the standard of care, you want those studies to be very important. In other words, done by key opinion leaders throughout the world, which is what we've done. Apart from our original multi-site study in the United States, the other studies, which are now 10, were done without any cost to the company, because we're such a major disruptive technology to the technology that exists today, which is basically 1860 technology, the hypodermic syringe, and a technique which is the standard of care, which was developed in 1921. So the technology, the patent portfolio, the analysis, the cost analysis is all ready now for us to move into commercialization of the product.
And let's talk specifically about the product that you're commercializing.
Sure. What's done today is, as the standard of care, the hypodermic syringe is filled with saline solution, and it's called the loss of pressure technique. So as the needle traverses tissue going to the epidural space to provide pain management for the woman in labor, it's very subjective. What's happening is you're waiting for a loss of pressure against your thumb as you advance the needle and push on the plunger. This leads to a great deal of problems. One, to premature injections of the drug, which obviously are not effective, or even worse, morbidity when the needle goes beyond the epidural space. What we do is we use science and computerization. So we, on a very clear level, we read the difference of the tissue scientifically. And thus far, a couple of thousand injections, we've had 100% results. So what we're basically doing is making it easier to learn the procedure. To learn the procedure I described with the syringe takes about 2 years for a resident. It takes approximately 90 different injections in vivo in a patient in labor to learn well enough to go out into the field. Then going out in the field, the morbidity rate, the damage rate to patients is the highest of any injection, 4.5%. We have had none of that in these past 9 studies. So what we're looking for at Milestone is to take this product and make it the standard of care, which means the doctors will have to use it. And the last part of this was, of course, the economic model.
So again, you're using it for epidurals now, which is a $5 billion market. So yours is more cost effective, it's safer, and it's just a better, newer technology. It is FDA approved under a 510K. Now, given that, let's talk about now you are ready to commercialize. Talk to us about that strategy.
Well, the strategy before the virus hit was to go to many different hospitals in the United States, Europe, Latin America, and to let them trial the product to see the difference and the ease of it. Now we're in quite a number of hospitals that have trialed it successfully, that like the product. We just about 2 weeks ago came out with the study, independent of us. We didn't fund that study for the economic advantages, which are enormous. Unfortunately, no vendor can enter any hospital in the United States at this point because of the virus. So we're waiting for that to pass us by so that the vendors can go in so that we can start selling. However, I anticipate sales starting even with that due to the catheter placement and the ability with our CathCheck unit to avoid touching the patient as often as one would have to do otherwise.
Well, let's go back to that CathCheck technology. Why is that product so important?
What happens is you have the procedure, the child is born, you're now put on a gurney, you're moved into recovery. There is a catheter that has been left behind when you did the epidural so that you continue giving the patient pain management for 1 or 2 days, whatever's necessary. The other end of that catheter is placed and taped in the patient's back. So they were in labor, now they're moved to a gurney, now they're moved to another bed in recovery, now they're moved to another gurney, now they're moved to the final bed. So the chance of that catheter being dislodged is significant. So the problem is when the patient tells the nurse that they're not getting pain relief, the anesthesiologist has only 2 options. There are 2 things that could have gone wrong. One is there's not enough drug being pumped in. So the procedure is to pump in a large bolus, a great amount of the drug into the patient, wait 20 to 40 minutes, which is an incredibly long time for an anesthesiologist, very costly to the institution, to say nothing of the patient still being in pain. Then if the patient has pain relief, they increase the dosage. Most of the time, however, the catheter has become dislodged. If the catheter is dislodged, they then have waited 20 to 40 minutes. They then have to do another epidural to place another catheter. We can let them know that in less than 10 seconds. First of all, it saves a great deal of time, so it saves a great deal of money. It helps the patient because they can immediately ascertain what the problem is. But given the virus, which we're presently in the midst of, a major institution in the United States wanted us to come in immediately, which we did last week, and they are trialing the product. They trialed it already on a COVID-19 patient. And for them, this was unbeknownst to us. We thought we had nothing to do with the virus. It's very, very important because the fewer times they touch the patient, the safer they are. So that's being trialed now at that institution.
How big is the market for the CathCheck?
Well, when you place the catheter, you have 2.4 million. We're only speaking labor and delivery. There are many more epidurals, but in labor and delivery, there are 2.4 million. We don't know how often this happens, but they want to check it multiple times. We're razor blade. We're in the disposable business. So with an epidural, being that we've done them perfectly, it's one disposable only. But when you're checking the patient, what the doctors are telling us, they may use 3 or 4 of those disposables. So it's quite a large market. It's in the many millions of dollars.
And Lynn, your team has 76 years of collective experience in the medical field. Who are a couple of the key players on your team?
Well, most important is Dr. Mark Hockman. Dr. Hockman is our clinical director for over 20 years. He is the world authority on computerized drug delivery. He is our resident inventor. He also invented, most importantly, the new CompuWave, which we mentioned, which allows the CathCheck, but also the possibilities for that are enormous. because catheters are used all over the body. We're speaking only of epidurals here today, but there are numerous possibilities for that patented technology. We also have Eric Gilbert, who's a gentleman that has been with us for about a year and a half. He's the executive in charge of sales. Our chief financial officer has been with us over 12 years. He's also our COO. He's out of Casio, United States. We have a very good but very small team of people in the company. So there's a lot of experience.
So what's the essential value proposition? I will note that Maxim Group, which is an investment bank in the small cap space, has a buy rating and a $3 price target. What would you say is the essential value proposition for investors?
I think it's enormous. I think that if people are looking at, I mean, the stock now is in $1.50 to $2.80 range. If people are looking for $3, it's not really the opportunity here. The opportunity here is very, very broad. In the first case with epidurals, the KOLs, the key opinion leaders, believe that we will become the standard of care. If we are the standard of care, you must use the product. You have no alternative. You have to use it in the United States. We have 4 million women approximately giving birth in the United States a year. If you have 2.4 have the epidural, the 1.6 probably don't, as they hear a horror story about epidurals. They read the risk factors. They're afraid a resident is going to do it, which is often the case. They don't know because their back is turned and they're in labor. So it's a very big problem. So we also believe we can become the standard of care. If we become the standard of care, and you're speaking of 2 million out of the 5 million, and our profit margin is $40 per disposable at a minimum, that's $80 million without the computer, just in epidurals and just in epidurals in labor and delivery, without expanding the market. But the strategic plan for the company, because of the broad platform, is to produce many different instruments in different areas of medicine, whether it's delivery of Botox, podiatric, rhinoplasty, removing liquid from the frontal lobe of the brain. We can do anything a syringe could do, but bring all the benefits to it that we have scientifically. So it's quite huge. So I think that in not a very long period of time, perhaps we're looking at a year and a half, I think that we should be in a very, very different place in the medical community.
Well, thank you, Len. It's a very compelling story. Thank you for being with us.
It's my pleasure. Stay safe.